Check. Everybody hear me? Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to the 4th month of the 11th day. It's hot. I'm hot. You guys hot? Oh, the humidity. I do good with humidity. So if I'm profusely sweating up here, don't worry. It's just me. All right, so I just, real quick, want to remind everybody that, remember that under the new covenent, we offer up spiritual sacrifices. And those are, the Bible talks about singing, dancing, prayer, thanksgiving, all those things that come from the heart. Those are spiritual sacrifices. And to our youth today that came up here and did that song, to put aside their nervousness and to get up here and sing praises to the Father, that's amazing. So, all right, how many people read the Torah portion, the Haftorah portion, and the Brit Hadashah? Good job. All right, so remember, we're focusing mostly on the Haftorah portion. So I'm going to stay away from the Torah and the Brit Hadashah this time, because the Haftorah portion was very short. It was only 1 Samuel 11:14 to 12:22. And in most of your Bibles, it's going to be titled, "The Kingdom is Renewed." All right, but what we're kind of going to be talking about today is rejection. So that's what we're going to focus on today, is rejection. But before we do that, you guys know that I like to always start out all my teachings with some megalithic place around the world. We won't be doing that this time either. Somewhat. We're going to talk about a little bit of our trip. So, here we go. So Melissa and I, went to Egypt and Israel recently. That was us when we first got there with our fresh squeezed sugar cane. So that's all that is just pure sugar cane. And it's not as sweet as you would think. It's semi-sweet, and it's very delicious, actually. So if you ever get a chance, fresh squeezed sugar cane is delicious. All right, there's us at the pyramids in Egypt. So those of you that haven't been there, when you actually see them, they are quite large. Lily's been there. And there's us inside the Great Pyramid. This is the Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber. And then here's some more. This is inside this is one pyramid that I hadn't been in, this one in the Bent Pyramid before. This is the middle pyramid. So if I go back, the one in the middle there, okay, the Great Pyramid is to the right, so we were able to go in that one in the middle pyramid this time. My last trip there, I was able to go in the Great Pyramid and the one to the left. I've been able to go into all three. And so this is inside that middle one, but what I want to point out here is, do you guys see those striations that are on the wall? If you see all of my megalithic places around the world, India, Mexico, everywhere you go, you see that type of carving where they rough cut out the rock. So it's not just in Egypt, it's all over. This is in the main part of that middle pyramid. And again, they say there were tombs and stuff, but nobody really knows. And this is just showing some of the degree of the cutting of the rock that they did there. This is right outside where the Sphinx is. There's a temple that's there that they call it a temple, but they never knew it was there until they dug up the Sphinx and started digging it in the 1920s. And there's Melissa when we're walking into that temple. You can see megalithic stone, there's polygonal masonry, and the cuts that we also see all around the world. I put this up here because this is right outside the Sphinx. Whatever this stela says, they've covered it up so you can't read it anymore. The other stela that's in front of the Sphinx, you can read. This one you can't. And they say it's to preserve it, but there's ancient, older writings that say that on this stela, it claims that Khufu actually came to do some work on the pyramids, and he didn't actually build them. I don't know if that's true or not, because obviously they won't let you read it, and you can't find pictures of what it actually says. So that the stela that's covered there with the dome-shaped thing, it's quite large. It's probably not quite up to that black line. Maybe from the stage up to the black line, it's about that tall. All right, and then here you see these deep cuttings into the bedrock. And these are all over Egypt, and it's into bedrock. So deep cuts. And what you're going to find is that these are also found in a lot of the pyramids. It's almost that they started here by cutting these holes, and then they'd build the pyramids over top of them, and then also caverns and stuff that go to them. So going back, there's another one. And these are all over. I just thought I'd take a picture of some of them. And just so you know, that's probably, I would say, maybe 10 stories deep. It's quite deep. But the camera just doesn't show you how deep it is. And you guys have all seen this pyramid, right? In lots of stuff. This is called the step pyramid. And many people believe that when Joseph was there, he used this area for some of the silos that were there, because he used those places that were carved into the bedrock to store grain. And they were already there. So this had always been closed to the public until recently they've opened it up. And so you can now go in there, and it's actually quite beautiful what's in there. And so again, this is inside there, and it's cut into the bedrock. Sometimes you can go down to the bottom. It wasn't open this time. So we went the back side, which is above, and you can go in and take a look. But I did a short video for you guys so you could see. All right. And then right next to that is the Serapeum, where they found out in the desert. I've showed you pictures of these before. It just looks like a flat desert out there, as far as the eye can see. And then they found this little spot where the sand was sunken in. They dug it out, and underneath is all of these. I think there's 24 of these boxes throughout a cave system, and Melissa and I got to go all throughout that cave system and see them. And they are quite large. They're, about this big when you're standing next to them. All right, so here is another one of those, and you can see where they have added brick around it that is not a megalithic brick. So you can see they've added, over time, brick. But to cut into bedrock like that, this type of bedrock is very difficult. Sorry, that was a recording. I didn't know it was a recording. All right, years ago when I started looking into megalithic sites that they were pre-flood, one of the big things that people, especially in the Messianic community, would tell me is, no, the pyramids aren't pre-flood, the Israelites built them. And I always scratched my head at that, because in the Bible it says that they made mud brick with straw and mud. And that's not what you find on the pyramids. The pyramids are made out of granite and basalt and all these other hard stones that, they couldn't cut those. And they still can't cut them today with the methods that they say they do. So I thought I'd take a picture of this, because this right here, what you're seeing, this is mud brick. That's right there next to megalithic stone. And when you look up close, you can actually still see the straw in the mud brick. That's what they were making. So the pyramids were well before them. No evidence of who built the pyramids again. And then here you go. You got megalithic stone next to mud brick, next to stone that was more recent, either the Roman times or even our day, which is on top of the mud brick, which you can see. And off to the right is the megalithic stone. And you can tell because it's cut in diagonals where it fits together with precision. But this was, again, buried, that they had to unbury. And they were going to tell you that it was buried with sand. But as you can see, that's not sand there. It's debris. And big chunks and rocks like that don't blow around. The only way that they're going to get there is if somebody fills it in or a worldwide flood placed it there. Here's the bent pyramid. Again, this one was off limits until recently, and we were able to go in here. And this one was different. When you go into these pyramids to get down into them, it is long. It is a long trek through these tunnels that are only about this high. And when you go in there, you are smoked. Okay, there's a picture. You can't quite tell how far down that is, But Melissa decided she wasn't going to do this one. She went into the others, but the bent pyramid, she said, nope. And she videoed me down at the bottom. And the bent pyramid is different. So the Great Pyramid, to get into that one, you can go up or down. And it has a king's chamber and a queen's chamber. The other pyramids are going down. And this one, you go down and then up into it. So this one went way, way, way down and then way up. And so here's a short video of that. You can see my legs there. I'm still alive. And now I decide, okay, now I can go. After I caught my breath. All right. Now this is going to take some time. We can stop the next video if you want. But this is inside the bent pyramid so you guys can get an idea. In every one of these pyramids, they're different. They're not all the same. They have different rooms, different shafts. I'm actually... All right, I'm going to turn off the audio because it's just me huffing and puffing because I'm half dead. At this point, I've already gone into this main chamber, which is, again, one of those cut-out big caverns that goes straight down, as you can see, into bedrock. But this one is different because there is another chamber that goes up, and you can go two directions. And then there's a room that they've closed off to the right, and then there's another room that you go to. And when I got in there, there's actually ancient wood still in there. I don't know if it was from when they built it, but there's still the pillars going across. What they used it for, nobody knows. And you can't really do hands and knees, but then you also can't stand up. So you're kind of in like a weird, you're walking like you're trying to do the limbo or whatever it's called. Forward. I'm not going to stay on this very long because I know that I tend to go long. And when these videos are embedded like this, I can't fast forward it. So when we're done here, I'll just put it on play and you guys can watch it if you want. Is that all right? And you can see what the end state looks like in there with all the bats, because there was a lot of bats in this one. But you can also feel, when I got up to the top up here, you could actually feel a breeze, which you don't get that in any of the other pyramids. So this one it's cracked somewhere and there is a breeze allowing to come in because it's pretty hot in here. All right, but that was our stay in Egypt. I thought I'd show you guys some of this real quick. And then we only stayed one day. Our focus was just to get to Israel, and so we took off and went to Israel. When we went there, we visited the Garden Tomb. If any of you guys have heard about this, it's not the traditional site for Catholicism, but it is now becoming the traditional site for Christianity. And when you go to Israel, it's very chaotic there, but the Garden Tomb is very peaceful. It's free to get in. It's a beautiful garden area. There's people that are usually praying there, singing, playing instruments quietly, and it's just it's a beautiful garden to go through. So that's us there. Again, I'm always sweating because it's humid. And there's the tomb where they believe that Yeshua was laid. As you can see, the stone's not there anymore, but the round stone used to be on the floor, and they've since moved it, that covered that tomb. And this is just what some of the other parts of the garden look like. And then in your Bible, you hear it says they took him to Golgotha, which means place of the skull. And if you can see up there, the two eyes. Now, mind you, this was 2,000 years ago that this place was called the place of the skull, so it looks different today. And this is what it looked like years and years ago. You can see the two eyes up there. In that big open hole off to the left and to the top, I believe that's where they believe Yeshua was actually put up on the cross. And down below, I think that's where they dug because they thought the ark was there or whatever. But anyway, and this is what that area looks like today. It's in the Muslim area, and they've put a bus terminal there. So that's what's right in front of it. but at least right next to it, they still have the garden tomb there, which is very peaceful. All right, going over there, a lot of people, you get to see pictures of, the old city, but you never really see what's outside of the walls, and it's a lot of tombs. A lot of tombs encircle around the old city because people believe that's where the Messiah is going to come. And you can see over there, kind of to the right of the that dome of the rock area, there's that east gate which is closed off. And they say that the Messiah is going to come through there when he returns. It's not biblical anywhere, but that's what they say. And this is just a map of the old city and what it looked like. I thought I'd show that to you guys. And then the Jewish quarter. So as we went into Jerusalem, when you go from the airport into Jerusalem, it's beautiful. And you're like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. And then you get to Jerusalem and it starts getting really busy. And you're like, oh, what's going on? Then you get into the old city. We went on Shabbat. And we were just bombarded with shops that were open and selling and just trying to get your money on Shabbat. And it was in the Christian quarter. And then you go over to the Jewish quarter, and it's clean. And then you have the Armenian quarter, and you have the Muslim quarter. And in each quarter, it's different. It's a different a feel, different look. And then when you go outside of Jerusalem, you see your tours aren't going to take you to some of the real places, but you go there, and the one side of Jerusalem is just completely filthy. We were just driving through, and you can see mounds of trash outside the people's homes, and just kids throwing their trash all over the street. One of them, as we were driving through, some of the kids ran up and threw a bottle up under our car, and it blew up and stuff. So I say that because we always get a picture of the Jerusalem that's there now as this most holy place. And it's really not. They have really rejected the Father, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is rejection. And then they'd moved the menorah when we were there. We went to the spot that it was supposed to be because I wanted to show Melissa. This was the Temple Institute's menorah, and they moved it. But we were walking through the old city another day, and there it was. We found it, so we took a picture of it. And then, of course, if you ever go to Israel, you have to have ice cream, and we ate a lot of ice cream. So, all right, and then we went to Shiloh. We brought back some wine and some oil, and then I thought this video plays there. A lot of people don't know that the tabernacle was actually in Shiloh for quite a long time before it ever went to Jerusalem. Around David's time, most of David's time, it was there in Shiloh. And so here's a quick video of that too.
First time to build the tabernacle. And in fact, after the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, the tabernacle was built. The tabernacle was a portable, temporary temple. But for 39 years, the company of Sonora wandered through the desert, taking apart and reselling, preparing on the land.
All right, we'll move on from there. So, the tabernacle, right, at Mount Sinai was where we were never commanded to build the temple. The temple was allowed to be built. They were commanded to build the tabernacle. And as we read from the New Testament, the tabernacle is a picture of us, right? It's a picture not only of the body of Messiah, but us as individuals, right? The Holy of Holies is where the Spirit dwelt, and we learn from the New Testament that the Spirit of God dwells in us, and it searches our heart and mind, and that's where He is. And so it's a picture of us. But as they got this information at Mount Sinai, right, they got the Torah, they rejected the Father almost instantly, right? They rejected the Word, and they from that point, there was a veil put over them because they had the truth, the Torah, but they had it without spirit because they didn't have faith. And so they had that until Yeshua came, and then we have the Spirit and the truth. And that's why under the New Covenant, we worship in spirit. Well, at Shiloh is where the tabernacle was at first. But because they rejected Yahweh, He rejected them. And then it says that He chose Jerusalem to place His name. But then we also read that it says that He rejected Jerusalem. Because of, same thing, they rejected Him. And then once again, we read later that it says that He will again choose Jerusalem. And if you've gone through any of my teachings, I believe that Jerusalem is the heavenly Jerusalem that will come down, not the Jerusalem that's there right now. That Jerusalem right now is not doing what they should be doing. And I don't want this to be a teaching about that today. We'll continue on. All right, so this is at the it's called the Fortress of Nimrod, and this is up by Mount Hermon, where the book of Enoch and some of the other biblical books say that the angels descended, was at Mount Hermon. And so this is called the Fortress of Nimrod. But for a while, I've often wondered if this was also a megalithic structure that was created before the flood that they found after the flood. And so when we went there, I went looking for some of this, the same evidence, and I do believe that, yes, this was pre-flood, and they just used it after the flood. Because even the land of Israel has megalithic sites that they did not build. They were there prior to. And then here's another quick video that I could take you through some of the stuff so you can see what some of these blocks and things look like. I'm just rambling on again, huffing and puffing. And you can see the different stone there, right? That people in medieval times tried to rebuild this. They didn't carve those stones. A lot of these places you can tell the difference between megalithic and modern. Our most modern has concrete that we use or some sort of plaster. In the Roman times and stuff, they just took, as you can see, they took some of these stones that were already laid over and just put them back on top of each other, as you can see over here. And that's it. I go find Melissa. All right, and just below this place that's called the Nimrod's Fortress is the place where they believe that Peter said, on this, where Yeshua said to Peter, on this rock I will build my church, right? And this is the area right here. It is filled with fig trees. They're everywhere. Figs everywhere. And it's beautiful, but this is right here is that rock, and that used to be flowing with what? Caesarea Philippi is where it's at. And out of there used to flow water, but they've blocked it up. That water doesn't flow out of there anymore. But that's where, he says, the gates of hell will not prevail, right? Because this is the place they called the gates of hell. And they worshipped a pagan deity there. And then when we went to get baptized, we tried to sneak to our own area, and we got met with this sign that said danger landmines. So we decided, okay, we won't go there. But the place that we did go, it was actually a quiet little church area. It was free. We went down in. We did our baptism together. We came up, and as we were getting ready to go, we looked up, and there were 4 giant white doves above us. And we thought, wow, that's pretty cool, man. So that was for us, and it was good. All right, so here's some of the area of Jerusalem where it's beat up. They don't take care of it, and they don't care. Right? And there's this battle there with people that are trying to, beautify it and make it a city, based off of the biblical commands. But then there's people there that don't care and they just want you out. Right? And this was, we went to Ben Huda Street to do some shopping. And one of the stores had this in there. This was some of the bolts that came flying through his shop when a suicide bomber came through and tried to take out, right? So obviously this is not a place of peace that it's supposed to be. These are the doors that they have in many of the rooms there in Israel because they're always on threat of bombs. So their rooms have these gigantic steel doors that you can lock yourself in. Yeah, but you don't see these when you do a lot of the tours there. This is people's homes, and this is Airbnbs that you go to, and then you'll get to see these things. And I thought this was interesting. This was probably the most pristine, most beautiful landscape and garden that's there, and it was in Haifa. And do you know what this is for? It's a shrine to a monkey. But it's the most beautiful thing that we saw in all of Israel. The garden, a shrine to a dead monkey. This is the border of Lebanon up there. Very beautiful area. But of course, everything there, it's militarized. So I shared that with you guys just because remember, the Father does not reject us unless we reject Him. And every time Israel rejected Him, He didn't reject them right away. He gives us time. And not a little bit of time, but a lot of time. He's very patient. All right, so Haftorah portion. We'll go through this. It's not very long. The kingdom is renewed. It says, and in 1 Samuel 11:12, and the people said unto Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men that we may put them to death. And Saul said, there shall no man be put to death. Because there were people saying, should Saul reign over us? Because they were crying out for a king. And so when Saul was about to be king, they said, let's put those people to death. But those are the ones that wanted the Father to reign over them. He says, there shall not be a man put to death this day, for today Yahweh hath wrought salvation in Israel. So Saul is saying, King Saul is saying that, hey, this is the day that salvation came. No, it's not. It says, then said Samuel to the people, come, let us go to Gilgal and what? Renew the kingdom. So when you renew the kingdom is when you put a new king in charge, right? So they put a new king in charge to renew the kingdom. And it says, and all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before Yahweh in Gilgal. And there they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings before Yahweh. And there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. Going on into, we're going to skip right ahead to 1 Samuel 12:12. It says, this is Yahweh speaking, he says, and when you saw that Nahash, the king of the children of Ammon, came against you, you said unto me, nay, but a king shall reign over us. They rejected the father as king, and they wanted, or you could say they rejected Yeshua as king, they wanted a man to reign over them. When Yahweh your God was your king, now therefore behold, the king whom you have chosen, when you have desired, and behold, Yahweh hath set a king over you. So we rejected him, right? But even in that rejection, he says, okay, fine. If you do this, I will accept it. Why? Because our Father loves us and he has a plan for us. If you will fear Yahweh and serve him and obey his voice and not rebel against the commandment of Yahweh, then shall both you and also this king that reigneth over you continue following Yahweh your God. So he's, even after rejection, our Father is still able to say, okay, I will allow this. And going on, it says that in Samuel 12:16, it says, now therefore stand and see this great thing which Yahweh will do before your eyes. Is it not when? The wheat harvest today. What is the wheat harvest? When did they reject him? Shavuot. When did they reject him at Mount Sinai? Shavuot. They rejected him as king on Shavuot. When we see in the book of Revelation, when it says, now has come salvation, now has come the kingdoms, have become. When might that be happening? Maybe Shavuot? I'm not going to get into Shavuot today, that's another teaching. But at this time it says, I will call unto Yahweh, and he shall send what? Thunder and rain, that you may perceive and see that your wickedness is great, which you have done in the sight of Yahweh in asking you a king. So even in this, he's still saying, look, what you did, it was wicked. You rejected me, but even then he's allowing it. But he's saying, look, there's going to be consequences. Right? Because just to show this to you, Shavuot is called the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, the first fruits, the wheat harvest. This is Exodus telling us this is all the names of Shavuot. Okay? And even before we get to that point, right, in verse 12 where we see it's the wheat harvest, it actually starts in 1 Samuel 6:13, and it goes on to say, and they at Beth Shemesh were reaping what? The wheat harvest. So this is all taking place in that time of them rejecting him. But we know that there's a day coming when his son will reign. All right. Revelation 11:19, it says, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple what? The ark of his testament. What holds the Ten Commandments? The Ark of the Covenant did, right? They were written on stone. Under the new covenant, what holds his Ten Commandments? Where is he writing them? On our heart. So the Ark of his testament was seen in heaven. We're not going to get into that either, but I just wanted to point that out. And what happened? And there were lightnings and voices and thundering and an earthquake and great hail. What happened when they rejected him at Mount Sinai? Thunder and lightning and a great earthquake. What happened in the days of Shavuot when they rejected him in Shiloh? Same thing. All right. And it says, and Yahweh said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. We have a problem with rejection. We get rejected and we think it's the end of the world for us. But we forget for the last 6,000 years, we have been rejecting our Creator. When we're rejected, how does it make us feel? Broken. It causes us to do things that we don't want to do. Depression, suicide, anger, hate. All these things. So when you're going through rejection, know that you're not alone. That the Creator of heaven and earth was also rejected. His Son, Yeshua, Creator of heaven and earth, right? He tells us, they are going to reject you, but they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. And by rejecting Yeshua, they're rejecting the Father. They are well acquainted with it. But because of their love for us, instead of wiping out all of mankind, they made a way to save those that will choose Him and not reject Him. All right, so with rejection, let's talk about this. By and large, the Dead Sea Scrolls in our community have been rejected. Believe it or not, Melissa, who's been watching Revive? So, Melissa and I turned on Revive this morning, and we caught what was on last night. And I was like, I cannot believe what is being taught by Eddie Chumney in Revive. And he was teaching the significance of the Dead Sea Scrolls and how he now believes that they are the followers of Yeshua in the wilderness. And I just was like, oh my goodness. Before I was like, I'm going to go to Shavuot. I'm going to go to Shabbat today and do this teaching. And people that watch Revive, they're going to be like, oh, Jeremy made his teaching off of Revive. But I did not. I did this prior to, and I told you guys last time that I was going to do a teaching on the Dead Sea Scrolls because Melissa and I we snuck into, anyway, you'll see. All right, so moving forward, disclaimer. Communities are not all created equal. Just because I'm teaching about the Dead Sea Scrolls, what we're going to find is that they were there to prepare the way in the wilderness. And then after Yeshua, they became the way in the wilderness. But we even see that in them, the Dead Sea Scrolls, we see things that they do that was part of their community, was not commandments, but they chose to do them. Too many people look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and they go, oh, we got to do exactly what they were. No, wait a minute. They were there. That's what they chose to do. Dave and Cindy have chosen for us to do certain things with this community, have they not? Not because it's biblical, but because of circumstances and the times and the way we live. We've got to say, look, we can't do things this way, right? You got to make rules. And that's what they did. They made rules. And so a lot of people might say, well, they added to the Torah. Well, they didn't take away from the commandments or add to them. They just made a community rule based off of what they were going to do because they wanted to be a set-apart people in the wilderness. All right. Congregations are not all the same. They're not all at the same stage in their walk. Here, we talk about things that people get uncomfortable with sometimes. Right? And the Dead Sea Scrolls has been one of those things. But more and more people are starting to come to the knowledge that, wait a minute, we need to not reject this and start reading it and get a little bit of wisdom and understanding from it. You've heard me say it before, and I say it all the time. Back in the day of Yeshua, it was Judah that had a religious movement that these people had to come away from, come out of, and teach. It's time to go back to the Torah with a heart and with the Spirit. And that's what they did at the Dead Sea Scrolls. Is it by coincidence that almost 2,000 years later, all of that was preserved for us to find that not Judah no more, right? But under the new covenant, Ephraim and their religious Christianity has corrupted its system. And many in the Messianic movement are seeing that, and they're coming out of it too. They're coming out of it to keep the Torah with love, with a heart, and look at His commandments that way. Exactly what they did in the Dead Sea. They were preparing the way for His first coming. Could it be that we are preparing the way for His return? And we found these books only to show us it's not adding to or taking away, but giving us a bigger understanding of what this battle of good and evil is, and what we are supposed to be choosing good and resisting the evil. knowing that the Torah teaches us how to choose the good, and it is a tutor, because it doesn't have every scenario we're going to face in life. But the Torah is that tutor to teach us how to choose good and resist evil. Churches, regardless of which one you come from, do not have it all right, nor do they have it all wrong. Nor did the people in Qumran have it all right. I rejected the Dead Sea Scrolls because some of the things I read there were in contradiction to exactly what Yeshua taught, such as things that they would not do on the Sabbath. Okay, but again, they chose not to do those things. It doesn't mean we have to. We follow the Torah, the Word of God. The Dead Sea Scrolls they don't say that they are the prophets writing these things. They make the claim that they are the ones in the wilderness preparing the way. Whereas some books, like the Book of Enoch, directly claims to be a prophetic word from the Creator. But a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls in their community rule, it's just the way they did things. I believe Qumran is where John the Baptist was. And I'm going to, right from the beginning, this is where we're going with that. All right, moving on. They called themselves the Yahad. Okay, Yahad just basically means unity, alike, at all, both, likewise, only together. Under the new covenant, what are we supposed to do? Unite. Be a united group of believers in Yeshua. That's what they did. They came out of the darkness into the light in the desert. To be a Yahad, a united group. Okay? We won't read this. Basically, what I want to take away from this is they think that these people that were making the way in the wilderness was from about 70 BC to 70 AD. Why did it end in 70 AD? That is when everything was destroyed, and these believers now went out into the world to preach the good news, what they were commanded to do. Sorry, I got a thing in my throat. All right, but it's interesting. 70 to 70. We'll move on. All right, so who found them? A lot of us know it was a shepherd. Some of these Bedouin boys found them. They sold a bunch of the scrolls. They were found in 1947, right before Israel got back the land. They were going to call Israel Judah or Judea, but at the last minute they decided to change it to Israel, which I think that would have helped out so much more if they actually would have called it to those who were at that time returning, which is Judah or Judea. And yes, we know that there is factions, just as in the Dead Sea Scroll times. There were people that usurped the priesthood, and these people claimed to be the right priesthood, the Zadok priest, the one that was with David and did not go astray, and the one that Ezekiel says is the rightful heir to the priesthood, the Zadok line. What were the caves used for? They stored a bunch of stuff. They found coins, lots of coins worth a lot of money. They also found what we're going to talk about later, the copper scroll, but they also know from the copper scroll that there's also a silver and a gold scroll that nobody's found yet. Who wrote them? I believe it's John the Baptist and his followers. I don't believe that John the Baptist started Qumran. I believe it started before him, after the Maccabean revolt, that they went out there, and that's where they started this community. But I believe that it was John the Baptist that was there, he was the one, but their group was also the one preparing the way. What was found in the caves? Again, lots of stuff. All right, they've recently found that the scrolls were not actually parchment, but they're actually skins, animal skins. And so now they're able to DNA test each portion, and instead of, because they've now found that they've put wrong pieces to wrong spots. But now they can go back and test and go, nope, this one goes to this scroll and this one goes to that scroll. All right, so I wanted to show you. So here's all the caves up there in the top right. You can see cave 11, 1, 4, and where Qumran was. And that red circle there, that's where John the Baptist was baptizing. Convenient? You've seen me show you this before. It says these things were done in Bethabara, beyond the Jordan where John was baptizing. And this is a mosaic, and you can see where Bethabara is. It's right at the opening to the Dead Sea where the Jordan River comes out. That's where John the Baptist was baptizing, right near Qumran. And there's a close-up of it. That word there under the fish is Bethbara. And just to give you kind of an overview, the circle on the bottom right, that's where John the Baptist was baptizing. And about that time, the Dead Sea was probably much higher than it is today. And then the circle down to the left, that's where the Qumran caves were. And then you can see Jericho. And then one of the traditional sites, there's many, the circle to the top right is where they say John the Baptist actually baptized. And Melissa and I were kind of in between those two where we went and did our baptism. And then here's a picture. You can see that Jerusalem is directly east or directly west of Qumran. So many of those that fled to the wilderness, when John the Baptist told the Sadducees and Pharisees, he says, "Who warned you to flee from the wrath to come?" Right? They were coming out to him there, but we also see that it says those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, right? To go out there, and those are mountains, by the way. Those are the nearest mountains. So Isaiah 43, we've read this before. It says, "The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare you the way of Yahweh. Make straight in the desert a highway or a path for our God." And in Matthew 3:3 it says, "For this is he that was spoken of by the prophet Isaiah, saying, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare you the way of the Lord, make his path straight." So this is him saying that John the Baptist was the one to do that. We've all heard that, right? But what we haven't put together is that here in Acts 9:2 it says, "And ask him for letters." This is when Paul is going to go out to the followers of the way, and he's going to persecute them, right? So it says, "And go ask him for letters to the synagogues to Damascus." So we've always thought that, oh, he's going to Syria because it says Damascus. "So that if he found any belonging to the" what? "The way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now he went on his way, he approached Damascus." So he's outside of Damascus. Is this Damascus in Syria? I don't believe so. I believe it was Qumran, because they called their community Damascus. "And suddenly a light from heaven shone around him." In Acts 9:11, Yeshua goes on to tell Paul. It says, "And the Lord said unto him, Arise and go into the street which is called Straight." What did Isaiah say that the one that was preparing the way in the wilderness is to do? Make a street called Straight. And inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus, for behold, he prays. So they're starting to understand that the sects of Judah out there was the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and they call them the Essenes. Now, for a long time, I did not believe that the Essenes and the Qumran community were the same people, because a lot of the writings about the Essenes said that they did not marry. And that's not true, because when you read through some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's commandments about wives and stuff. But now in Josephus, it says that there was two groups of the Essenes, those that married and those that did not. And that's what we see Paul teaching. Paul was one of those that chose not to marry, to focus on just building the kingdom. But then there were all those, right, in the time of Yeshua that were married. Some of his disciples were married. So here's from the community rule, what we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It says, "He shall not rebuke the men of the pit, nor dispute with them. He shall conceal the teaching of the Torah from men of injustice, but shall impart true knowledge and righteous judgment to those who have chosen" what? "The way." This is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And they're saying that this is the Messiah is going to say he's not going to fight with them. He's not going to dispute with them. Right? But he's talking about the judgment of those who have chosen the way. So that's right from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here's another thing from the Damascus document. It says, "He decreed an age of wrath for the people who did not know him." What does Yeshua say? "Begone from me, I did not know you, you workers of iniquity," who did not know him. And he established appointed times of what? Goodwill for those who search his commandments and walk in the perfection of the way. This is the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Qumran communities talking these things. And he revealed hidden things to their eyes and opened their ears. What is Yeshua saying all the time? Those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. You don't find that. That's Yeshua's words, but this is right from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And open their eyes so that they might hear deep secrets and understand all future things before they befall them. What did he say? That you who are of the light will not, these things will not come upon you unaware, because you are of the light. Listen now, all you who know righteousness. Okay, and there goes on in the community rule. It says, he shall guide them all in knowledge according to the Spirit. We know from the New Testament, where do we get knowledge? Where does wisdom, understanding, and knowledge come from? Only from the Ruach HaKodesh. And if we walk in darkness or in sin, then if we continually do it, not if we sin once, the Ruach is there to convict us. That's another thing that it does. But if we continually and start walking, the Ruach leaves. And with it, so does wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. This is why I'm so adamant about people and studying books and teachings from people that do not believe Yeshua is the Messiah. Because if they do not believe he's the Messiah, they do not have the Ruach HaKodesh. They do not have the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge from God to understand the Scriptures. And it's only through the Ruach, which is our teacher, that it becomes known, right? I can sit up here till I'm blue in the faith. Yeshua did it, right? He spoke the truth to these people, but they still would not hear it. They still could not get it. Even his own disciples did not get it until they received the Ruach HaKodesh. Then they started to understand, and they knew, because the teacher is the Ruach HaKodesh that gives us the wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And it says, the spirit of each, and according to the rule of the age, because there's different understandings through different ages, right? Some of the stuff applied for them at that time, some of the stuff applies for us today. And shall thus instruct them in the mysteries of marvelous truth. Paul talks about the mysteries of God. So that in the midst of the men of the community, they may walk perfectly together. What are we commanded to do? What did Yeshua pray for us? Is that we walk in unity. And we quit arguing and bickering. And this is what they set out to do in Qumran before Yeshua ever came. They were preparing the way for Yeshua because Yeshua was going to teach us what the way was. It was to follow the Torah in love and to be united together. In all that he has been revealed to them, this is the time for the preparation of the way into the wilderness. Well, that's interesting. Right there, they're quoting Isaiah. And he shall teach them to do all things that is required at that time, and to separate from all injustice, or iniquity, or darkness, or sin, or evil. And when these become members of the community in Israel, according to all these rules, they shall separate from the habitation of unjust men, and shall go into the wilderness to prepare the way of him. And here's the direct quote. As it is written, prepare in the wilderness the way, make straight in the desert a path for our God. They are saying exactly what happened to the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt. They came out of Egypt, right? When they become members of the community, they shall separate from the habitation of what? Unjust men. Israel came out of Egypt, came out of wickedness into the wilderness. But what did they go into the wilderness to learn? The Torah. How to choose good and resist evil. Make straight the paths in the desert. Again, this is a direct quote that's what they were doing at Qumran. That's what we see where Paul went to these people. It says this path that they're doing, the way, is what? the study of the Torah, which he has commanded by the hand of Moses, that they may do according to all that has been revealed from age to age, and as the prophets have revealed by his what? Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. So those that are in this community are saying, we are learning the Torah, and we're doing it through the Spirit, rather than just walking out the legalistic, right? Because they were, it says don't do this. But I can think of these things in my mind and, do things in secret nobody can do, as long as I live by the letter of the law. The law was never meant to be the letter of the law. It was always meant to be a spiritual thing to teach us how to resist evil and choose the good. Continuing on, it says, and the interpreter shall not conceal from them out of fear of the spirit of apostasy. When you read through the Dead Sea Scrolls, all you get is good spirits and evil spirits. And they wrap them up into two, the good spirit, the evil spirit. But on the good side, you have the spirit of love, the spirit of this, the spirit of kindness, the spirit of... And there's a bunch of them that teach us that these feelings that we have and these emotions are actually spirit, and they're from God. And we get these, but other things don't, like the AIs they're trying to commute, right? They don't have the Spirit of God. But along with that, when we chose to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, we also now have the spirit of apostasy that we have to battle against. It's in our mind. We have to choose the good and resist the evil. And of those things hidden from Israel, which have been discovered by him, and when these shall become the community, they shall separate from the habitation of unjust men again, and go into the wilderness to prepare their way of the truth. As it is written, in the wilderness, prepare the way, make straight in the desert a path for our God. This path is the study of the law. So this is another part of a scroll they found. So it's not just once. They found it many and multiple times. Not only that, the children of light in the Dead Sea Scrolls is only found in the New Testament. It's not found in the Old Testament. In John, Yeshua's own words, it says, while you have light, believe in the light, that you may be the children of light, because we do the good. These things spake Yeshua and departed and hid himself from them. Okay, in Ephesians 5:8, it says, for you were sometimes darkness, right? We were evil, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. In 1 Thessalonians 5:5, it says, you are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. And this is found all over the Dead Sea Scrolls. But it doesn't say children of light. It calls same word, but they translate it as sons of light. Okay, the War Scroll, the Damascus document. It's not in just one document. It's all over them. That they were the children of Zadok, the sons of light, the followers of the way. So here in the Damascus document, it says, and they shall take care to act according to the exact interpretation of the Torah during the age of wickedness. What's the age of wickedness? We're in it. We're in it. They were in it. We are in it. They shall prepare for the sons of the pit, and they shall separate from the sons of the pit, and shall keep away from the unclean riches of wickedness, acquired by vow or anathema, or from the temple treasure. They shall not rob the poor of his people. To make widows their prey, of the fatherless their victim. They shall distinguish between clean and unclean. They shall proclaim the difference between holy and profane. They shall keep the Sabbath day according to its exact interpretation, and the feasts and the day of fasting according to the finding of the members of the what? The new covenant. They're saying that they're preparing this way, which is the new covenant, in the land of Damascus. But they were in Qumran. They weren't in the land of Damascus up in Syria. They were in Qumran. They shall set aside the holy things according to the exact teaching concerning them. They shall love each man his brother as himself. They shall succor the poor, the needy, and the stranger. What is part of the new covenant? He says that you shall know them by their fruits, right? In one place. And in another place it says you shall know them by the love they have for one another. This is part of the new covenant. Is to walk out the Torah in love. Not to reject the Torah. Not to make it a legalistic document, but to learn from it. To walk in love. And not to define what love is ourselves, but to let the Torah teach us what love is. Not a romantic novel. Not accepting me because I want to be somebody else, right? Anyway, this next slide, Melissa and I found this quite hilarious. And so did the people around us that also were there believing that that place is where John the Baptist was. When I went there years and years and years ago, as I was studying these things in 2010, there was a different video they played there, which was interesting. And they had it all open. You could go walk up by the mountainside and everything else. They've closed it off. And here's the video that they play now. And I find it hilarious. All right, so sorry about that. You can't quite hear what's going on because of the fans. But basically, it started out by talking about what they were doing in the community. And then one of their community members, they said that there was this guy that came in, and his name was John. And later it goes on and it says, the guy stands up and says, could this John be the same John the Baptist that was with us? And the leader of the community says, no, it wasn't. There's no way. And you're in trouble for saying it, basically. And so their whole thing is them trying to show you. They had no proof, no nothing. But that video that you get to see now when you go to Qumran is just going to basically tell you now that that place is not where John the Baptist was. That was their whole thing of doing all of that. Oh, and that also you don't have free will to choose, which we know is junk. And them in that community spoke about that free will. You get to choose. It is you. Do you choose the good spirit and resist the evil, or are you going to choose evil? And they're trying to say, no, you don't get the choice. Which and the people in front of us, that's what they were talking about, that same thing. They were laughing. Serious? That's what you have now when you go to Qumran? Is that the Israeli government has decided that there's too many people believing that this is where John the Baptist was, so let's say it's not. No proof, no evidence. They just basically say, nope, it wasn't. Anyway, so here's when we got there. I just thought, this doesn't happen. They said this never happens. But on the day we were there was a flash flood. And so you got to see some of the water pouring down. And there you go. This is around all those caves. But that water, there must have been a spring or something that came in one time and filled, because this place is dozens of what they call ritual baths, what many in Judaism would call a mikvah, what I call a baptismal. They were baptizing themselves, and they're also baptizing in the Jordan. But they're all over. I mean, this whole place is filled with them. And these are all different ones. All over. And cisterns, because obviously there was lots of water. More of them. And all these pictures are different. They're not all the same baptismal or ritual bath. Another cistern. So this place was all about water. Here it just shows when they were digging what they found there. And that was a trove of, let's see, what does it say? How many coins? 560 silver coins. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And these people in this community, they did what they did in the New Testament. They took their funds and put them all together and lived together. We've tried, I don't know about you guys, but many in the Torah movement have tried that today. And it fails horribly, because there's people that have pride and they want to be the ruler of the community, and they want to do it this way, and they want to do it that way. And it's the same thing with many of the congregations. We can't even get the congregations where we just give a little bit of money to 10%. Well, back then, they gave all of their money, every bit. And we see in the New Testament what happened to that couple that sold all that they have, but kept some back. Right? It was theirs to give. They didn't have to give it all, but they lied that they did give it all. They didn't have to give it all. They could have said, yeah, we're only giving you half. But they were saying, no, give it all, and let's all live together off of this. And so, anyway, there's a lot of money here. And the copper scroll talks the amount of treasure that's supposed to be wherever it's buried it's billions. All right, moving on. So that's where they first found those scrolls. You can see some of those caves. That's a video, but we'll move on so we can get done in time. Lots of caves here, but not only there, all throughout that mountainside, and even down toward Masada, they were finding scrolls in caves. And this is what some of them look like. Here's an overhead picture of Qumran. So it was very small. It wasn't very big. And it's mostly a ton of baptismals all over the place. And this is up in the mountains. I didn't take this picture. But looking down on Qumran, and then you can see the Dead Sea in the background. But again, I believe it was probably much more closer to where they were 2,000 years ago. This is a rendering of what they think it looked like. Again, it's just what they think. All right, so real quick, I wanted to hit on this, the Copper Scroll Project by Jim Barfield. So one of the things that he's found is that the Qumran area was actually laid out quite like the whole old city of Jerusalem. And so one picture over here, you see the Qumran community on the left, the yellow, and on the right is the layout of the old city of Jerusalem. And so they kind of laid out Qumran in that fashion. Jim Barfield is the one that does the Copper Scroll Project. I found out recently that he was also Army helicopter pilot, and he flew the AH-1 Cobra and the OH-58 Kiowa. So this is the copper scrolls that are actually now in case. They couldn't open it, so they had to cut it because it was too brittle. And as he studied the copper scroll, it talks about, like I said, a gold scroll, a silver scroll, and other treasures all over that he believed are right there in that Qumran community, still buried. And this is what some of them look like. So you can see this Hebrew is quite old Hebrew. So this is Melissa and I, because of Jim Barfield, he believes that the Ark of the Covenant and some of the temple things are still buried there. And this area where it's buried is that heart, where you see that heart. And so he says that when you go there on the back side of it, there's actually, it's concreted closed with a man-made concrete. And they've since closed it off. You cannot go up there anymore. But Melissa and I played the dummy. And we parked up there in the top right, where you see that little blue. There's a cemetery there that you can park. So we parked and we went up this back, that back wadi there, to the back side, and came up just to kind of get a look at it. There's no signs that say it's not fenced or anything, so we didn't trespass. We just played the dummy like, okay, we're going to walk up there. So we did in this area. See, when I went there the first time in 2010, they used to say that this is where the Qumran community would go back there and they would relieve themselves. So that's what they said, because it was behind the hill, that they would go up there and that's where they used to go to the bathroom. I find it interesting that that's what they say was there, but Jim Barfield, through his study of the Copper Scroll, thinks that the tabernacle is actually buried there. And I thought, well, that's interesting. One person says this is where the holy instruments of the tabernacle are, but they're saying that's where they relieved themselves. So we went up there, and you can see this is from Qumran. You can see that little outcrop of rocks there, and where my finger is pointing, that's where he believes it's buried. And Melissa's showing you right there. You can start seeing there's a different color of rock there. So we hiked up there, and this is what you see. And it's sure enough, it is definitely a man-made concrete. And when you go to Qumran, you can see they use that same type of whatever that they put rock and dirt and everything together to build their community. So whether that spot is where they dumped the leftovers, or if it's truly a cave that is there that Jeremiah buried and covered, and they later went and covered it up with that same concrete, people have gone and looked there, and you can see they've started digging it out. And I believe that Jim Barfield actually had permission to go excavate there and started digging. But right after he began, the Antiquities came and they shut him down. They said, nope. And so they stopped allowing any digging over there. And now they've since closed it off. So whatever's under there, there's something. Whether it's the temple treasures or not, don't know. And the silk. That's right. He's still trying, and he's pretty close to getting in there and being able to dig that out and see what's under there. And like I said, they've already found troves of lots of money there. You know, it's not far-fetched to believe that there's something buried there in the wilderness by the people that prepared the way. And now in our day, when we're preparing the way from Christianity, coming out in the Torah, isn't it interesting that in their day, they prepared the way for Yeshua's first coming. 2,000 years later, when we see that the prophecies are all about Yeshua returning around this time, that we find the Dead Sea Scrolls, and all of a sudden, there's things still buried there. Very interesting. And here's some of the pictures so you can see. All right, so for those of you with the Dead Sea Scrolls, this always comes up, okay? We keep the 364-day calendar here, the Zadokite calendar. The reason why is because Dave has studied it out, and there is no evidence anywhere of any other calendar. There is a ton of evidence of the 364-day calendar in the book of Jubilees, the book of Enoch, the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's references to it throughout some of the scriptures, but other than that, the calendar that is used by rabbinical or modern Jews today is found nowhere. And we know that it was well after the temple, around that time, that they established this, and they weren't even using that one in the time of Yeshua. So with some of these things, why? Why is it 364 days? Because they used no intercalation in their counting. None. They didn't use it. And what I mean by that is they kept a continual 364-day calendar, and they didn't insert a week or a day. They kept it going and going. So, how can that be? How can that happen? Because after about 20 years, they're going to be celebrating Passover in the winter, right? Well, unless my theory, and my theory only, you guys, this is just where Jeremy has come, my conclusion, okay? You guys know enough about the calendar, so we're not going to talk about that. But this is my theory. Again, theory. Why is it 364 days? Well, in Matthew it says, "But as in the days of Noah, so shall it be at coming of the Son of Man." It says, in those days, in the book of Enoch, it says, Noah saw that the earth had tilted, or it became inclined on one side or sank down, and that the destruction approached. So in Noah's days, the tilting of the earth is what brought the destruction. That's what the book of Enoch says. Well, we learn that it says that the fountains of the great deep broke open and the windows of heaven poured down. Okay, but with that, I want to say the fountains of the great deep burst forth and the windows of heaven were opened to what? Rain, and rain fell. So the scriptures tell us that the windows opening was the rain falling. I've heard people say all kinds of things. What are the windows and what are the gates of Enoch? Remember, that was written way back then about things that they didn't have. Well, the way we say gate is not the gate that they said. Because these were people living out there in the wilderness and other things. Or if it's way back in Enoch's day. Anyway, so my theory, because in Genesis, when it says that on day 2, right? It says that he separated the waters from the waters. And then he had the waters above, the waters below, and in between was the firmament, which he called heaven. Okay? So if you have a drop of water, like I've said before, water in its natural resting state is a drop. That's what it is. Well, if you start to separate that, now you got a drop in the middle and a bubble on the outside. And as that bubble builds, it's taking the water from the drop. Well, as that water goes away from the drop, the Bible tells us that on the third day that the dry land appeared. And in the New Testament it says that the earth came out of the water. Because as that water went up into the atmosphere, the water droplet in the middle sank down because the water went away and revealed the earth that was created in the water. And so this is what I believe it may have looked like. Whether that canopy around was a bubble or a ice or whatnot, I believe that's what it looked like. And here's what's interesting. Before then, the Bible says that people lived to be almost 1,000 years old. Who believes that? There are many people that believe that that they're talking about, oh no, they didn't really live to be 1,000 years old. But I believe so. And even the scientists today tell us that, look, if you have water around, or concrete, or lead, it's going to keep out those harmful UV light, the X-rays, which age us. So if you have that, we would live much longer. Not only that, there's this. They've found those sap ambers that have oxygen bubbles in them, right? Like Jurassic Park. They now know that at one point in our history, our atmosphere had 35% oxygen. They tell us that if we had 35% oxygen in our atmosphere, we would get cut and we would heal super fast. But if the free radicals came in, those UV lights and the X-rays and stuff, we would die really fast with 35% oxygen. But they said if you keep those out, then we would heal fast, we could run to California, not get tired, and we would live really, really long time. And not only that, they've now said that dinosaurs could not live in our atmosphere. There's not enough oxygen. They can't breathe it. Well, if you had reptiles during the times of Noah, where there was 35% oxygen, people lived to be 1,000 years old, well, then we should see reptiles that got to the size of 3 stories high, because reptiles never stop growing. So if the world was in a conducive environment for reptiles to grow, they would be giant. And if there was a flood, we should see them buried all over the earth. What do we find? Giant lizards buried all over the earth by a worldwide flood. It cracks me up that they say that this was 35% oxygen was millions and millions of years ago. No, it wasn't. We found dinosaurs that still have flesh on them, but they were buried. So in that time, right, people lived longer, they had more oxygen, they breathed. But the earth tilted and the atmosphere changed. We went from a calendar that may have been 360 or 364 to a different calendar. It slowed down. And now we don't have 35% oxygen, we have 21%. And we started dying off sooner. So my theory is that when the fountains of the great deep broke open, they shot up in the air, they burst that bubble, right? The rain came down. We have the scarring all throughout the earth that we can still see today that shows that that actually happened. The fountains of the great deep broke open, and that water came up so forcefully that it pushed the sand. Not Pangea, it didn't move the islands. It pushed the debris to carve out that perfect S shape that we see here on the right, and carved our continents that we have today. And we still have that. We can see it from satellite imagery. Okay? And these are all volcanoes around the world that go around that cracked earth. We're not going to talk about the tilt, but you've heard me talk about this. I'll be done in 10 minutes, I promise. 5 o'clock, somebody said I had till 5, so I won't go no more. If our earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees, like I believe it is, like they say it is, well, if you move that tilt in closer and speed it up, you have what's called the conservation of angular momentum. As a pilot, I have to know this, because my rotor blade, when I start pulling my collective up, my rotor blade does this. And when it does that, it creates lift. And my rotor blade actually, because it's getting closer, it speeds up much faster. And then if I reduce my collective and it goes down, it slows down. I have to know that, because when it does this, it requires more torque. When it does this, it requires less torque, more torque. So I had to know that. But that works in the same thing with everything. The figure skater, when she puts her arms out, she slows down. When she gets closer to the center of mass, she speeds up. So if the earth is going to tilt, like it did in the days of Noah, and it comes this way, or it can even flip all the way around, but it flips in a way that it's less than 23.5 degrees, well, then it's spinning faster. Our year would be quicker. Instead of 365 and a quarter days, could it be 364, or what some believe to be 360? Either one. So could the Qumran community have written that calendar because at that time there was 364 days, but when Yeshua died on the cross, something happened, because it said it went dark for 3 hours. There's no eclipse in history that can do that. So what happened? The tilting of the earth could have done it, or another planet coming in between the sun and the earth. We don't know what it was. But could it have changed then? And then it's going to change again when Yeshua returns? It is very plausible. And we know that 23.5 degrees, we don't need to go out into space to look at that, because if I can go to the equator, right, on the equinox, and I can point throughout my year a compass, and the sun will go 23.5 degrees that way from directly west, and it will go 23.5 degrees that way on directly west throughout the year as it moves. And this is what we read in Psalms 19:6 when it says that it goes forth from the extremity of heaven at its circuit, the tekufa, unto the extremity again. So as it moves throughout the year, we see the sun rising in a different place. And Enoch talks about the gates, these 6 gates. We're not going to go into that. But this is what I want to get to. Does the earth really tilt? Could it be that that's what returns this earth to a 364 calendar? Could the Dead Sea Scrolls and the book of Enoch, which is said that it's written for the time of the end, the generation for the end. So could it be that, that what he was seeing, the calendar he was seeing, was not how it worked in his day, but how it's going to work in our day when Yeshua returns? Because here in Psalms 82:5 it says, they do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth shall be shaken. It says in Job 9:6, which shaketh the earth out of her place. So we know that the earth is going to be shaken out of its place. In Isaiah 13:13, therefore I shall shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place. In 24:1, behold, Yahweh maketh the earth empty, and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down. Isaiah 24:20, the earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage. So that, again, this is my theory of what's going to happen at the Great Tribulation. And that's why when we see things and it says that the stars of heaven fall, I don't believe that the stars are actually falling to the earth, but we're seeing the earth tilt, and we see them coming down, unlike we've ever seen before. And I believe it's in Joel, I don't know if it's Joel, but it says that the earth shall go down at noon. Well, it does that every time. This time it's saying it's going down a different way than it's ever done before, than we've ever seen. Again, that is just my theory. All right, so that's where I think that 364-day calendar will come into place. And when it does, this is what it will look like. Okay, at the exact time that we're doing the days of unleavened bread, the southern hemisphere will be doing their 7 days, bringing in the stuff from their fall. So spring and fall are happening at two different times in the earth, which isn't doing it now. All right. And last of all, you guys have seen me read through this, but like we talked about rejection today, is we are in a battle between good and evil, light and darkness, and our Creator is waiting desperately for us to be with us, for His kingdom to come. And while we're building His kingdom, we have to battle. There are so many people right now that are struggling with anger and depression and all of these things. And really, my wife and I had an argument recently, and for some reason it was really hard for this time for me to just let it go, and it was pride. It was pride that makes you go, I just want to be angry. But the moment that I was like, you know what, I don't want to be angry anymore. I want to return to loving and forgiving. And the moment I did that, it was amazing how quickly it went away. It's because it's a choice. And sometimes we say, it's really not. I can't control it. No, it is. It is a choice, because the Bible says that children, before they know to choose the good and resist the evil. And that's what we're doing. That's what this is all about, is we want to choose Yeshua, who was what? There was no guile found in Him. There was no evil. Though He knew evil, but there was no evil in Him. He walked out the Scriptures perfectly, and He wants us to try to do the same. And when we don't, we need to repent and go back. We need to stand on our pride. And even if we were right, sometimes we have to just go, you know what? I'm just going to choose to forgive anyway. And sometimes it's better for us to do that for our own selves, so that we don't live too long in that darkness. All right, sorry. Next.